Magandang araw, Podmates! Howie Severino muli na nagpapaalala na nakakatalino ang mahabang attention span. Maraming ganap sa ating politika. Dapat ba tayong mabahala sa bangayan ng Marcos at Duterte? O mababaw at pansamantalang alitan lang ito? Anong nangyayari sa Unity Team? Kasama natin ngayon si Dr. Aries Arugay, political scientist at chair ng Political Science Department ng UP Diliman para magbigay linaw sa ating magulong politika. Magandang araw sa inyo, Aries. Salamat sa pagpapaunlak sa aming imbitasyon.
Magandang araw, Howie. Thanks for having me.
Prof, no, there's a lot to unpack here, no. But I'll just lay the groundwork para malinaw din sa ating listeners kung ano yung pinag-uusapan natin. Nung nag-umpisa itong bangayan nila dating Pangulong Duterte at Pangulong Bongbong Marcos, naging meme kaagad, no? Ito raw ang tunay na drug war, no? Polvoron o cocaine versus fentanyl, no? Ilabas na raw ang popcorn dahil sa entertainment aspect nito, no? But after a few days, no, kumakalat ngayon ng iba't ibang chismis, kung ano yung mga posibleng mangyari, may mga gumagamit ng salitang coup d'etat, etc. No? So, ano ba, Prof, no? Is this more than a temporary distraction? Ano yung pwedeng mangyari ngayon sa pamahalaan? Paano maapektuhan ang taong bayan?
How we may consider them the two most powerful political dynasties at the moment. Hindi naman ito forged ng mahabang panahon, no? This was really a convenient conglomeration of mutual interest, no? But at the same time, alam naman natin the restoration of the Marcos dynasty at the peak of political power in the country was occasioned by former President Rodrigo Duterte himself, no? So I mean, he made the Marcos brand very palatable to the Filipino public once he assumed the presidency in 2016. Hindi naman natin sinasabi na yung bangayan ng mga magkakaalyansa, present naman yan. If we will look at our political history, wala naman alyansa na hindi talaga nag-aaway na parati na lang bate, no? But what is really strange is bakit isinasa publiko masyado yung kumbaga parang dirty laundry at mudslinging. I mean, this is, I think, what is the difference, no, compared to previous alliances before, no? Medyo hindi lang siya in public, but the allegations are quite, to say the least, very unstatesmanlike, unpresidential, and sabihin na natin gutter language, no, kanal, and this is very unbecoming of supposedly a former head of state and the current head of state.
Okay, Aris, no, I want to pick up on that because itong sinasabi mo ngang unstatesmanlike, gutter language, etc. Well, we've been used to that, no? And I guess if you're President Duterte or former President Duterte, it was actually an effective behavioral strategy on his part, if you would call it a strategy. You know, I mean, people see this as being authentic. So, parang hindi masyadong issue para sa kanya and itong mga followers ng pagiging unstatesmanlike, yung gumagamit ng profanity. It's actually worked to his benefit, no? But ang tanong ko rito, is there a real game plan here or is he just releasing emotion? Ano yung posibleng objective dito, especially since mukhang hindi naman sila masyadong nag-uusap as a family about their tactics, no? I mean, if you believe Vice President Sara Duterte, who says that she never spoke to her brother Sebastian, mayor of Davao, na Sebastian Duterte, who called for President Bongbong Marcos's resignation, and then she has not said anything negative about the president, and in fact, she was even assigned to be a caretaker leader while during the recent state visit to Vietnam of President Marcos. No, so parang parang magulo, no? Parang magulo yung nangyayari. Parang saan ba patungo ito?
From what I observe, no, alam natin that since last year, and sometimes you can even trace in the beginning of the Marcos Jr. administration, ang tanong kasi natin, is this really an alliance of equals? No? The posturing of the Dutertes is that they made it possible for the Marcos dynasty to be restored, and the victory of Marcos Jr. would not have been possible if not for Sara Duterte deciding to slide down to the vice presidency. May pruweba naman dito kasi according to public opinion polling, when Sara was still in the running for the presidency, lamang siya, no, kay Bongbong Marcos. And some statements of Sara Duterte, the vice president, mentioned that to implied na parang kung hindi ko ginawang desisyon yon, hindi magiging presidente yung nakaupo ngayon, no? So there seems to be this perception that yung mga Dutertes yung bumubuhat sa at may totoong kapangyarihan. And I think those in the Marcos side of the alliance has decided that the partnership should not be skewed towards the dynasty, who is not actually in power right now. No? So parang over a series of perhaps deliberate decisions, there was, what I observed is that talagang parang may attempt really, may campaign to disempower the Dutertes. No? So for example, Sara Duterte wanted the defense portfolio. She did not get it. I mean, you don't need to be a political scientist to figure out why, no? Bakit mo ibibigay yung defense portfolio, no? Na ikaw yung may pinaka malapit na relasyon sa sandatahang lakas, no? Sa isang constitutional successor. That's one.
Nagtampo si Vice President Sara Duterte doon publicly, di ba? She released a statement saying she was promised this and it was not given. This is very early. This was in the very early days of the administration.
Right. And pagkatapos naman noon, nalipat naman yung issue sa confidential funds, no, na hindi pinagbigyan, no? And then if you notice the cabinet makeup of Marcos Jr., it's a far cry from the heavily militarized cabinet of Rodrigo Duterte, no? And some of the quote-unquote Duterte appointed generals, no, nilipat at the moment si NSA Anyo na lang, tsaka si peace advisor na lang yung natira, no, of the Duterte appointed generals. Apart from the confidential funds, it seems like nagkaroon ng policy switches din, no, si President Marcos in terms of key policy legacy supposedly of the Duterte administration, the pivot to China, the bloody war on drugs, NTF-ELCAC, and quite recently yung ICC case, no? So what we observe is that gradually parang, no, Dutertize yung politika sa Pilipinas. And this is why President Duterte had to, of course, he might not have organized it, pero yung idea nito na going back to yung kanyang doubling down on his base, no? Kaya yung nagkaroon na rally sa Mindanao, and now talks of seceding, no? All of this is really to rally the base. Kasi alam naman natin that Duterte's really has no taste for what they call Imperial Manila politics. So bumalik sila dun sa kanilang reliable base, which is in Mindanao.
Okay, Aris, I want to ask you some of the urgent questions about the immediate future, no? Because I guess that's what a lot of people are worried about. to the extent that people are worried, no? Ano ba yung danger or risk na kakampihan ng ibang elemento sa militar si dating Pangulong Duterte? Because he actually addressed the military, no, during his rally in Davao, no. Many of us heard that, saying na papayagan ba ng militar na galawin yung saligang batas. Of course, yun din ang isang konteksto kung bakit niya tinawag na drug addict itong si Pangulong Marcos, no. I guess appealing to the law enforcement base that he still has, if he still has one, no. So ano yung risk? What are the risks accompanying those kinds of charges, no? Are they real, or is this just a lot of hot air on the part of a former president?
Oh, Howie, I think indeed it seems like former President Duterte is not living in the 21st century, no? And why do I say that? Because while there have been military coups in our neighbors, no, Thailand, Myanmar, ang Philippine history naman, we've never had a successful military-led coup in our history. Wala. Puro yan failed. And the only time military intervention, undue military intervention in settling a legitimacy crisis occurred was in 2001, no? Yung EDSA DOS. But the military came in there reactively at late, no? Na nakita na yung groundswell of people, and then the institutions have taken a back seat na abort yung impeachment trial. Dun nila nakita na kailangan nilang makialam, no? But for them to instigate anything at this moment, particularly you have a government that's been elected with a majority mandate, yung notion na may legitimacy deficit, wala dun eh. And it tells you that if anything, coups in the country will only be successful with popular support. On the other hand, we must also ask, does the military have an appetite to rule? I mean, they have no experience in ruling the entire country. Kung ako yung professional na general, hindi ako trained at hindi ko rin aatimin na mamunos dito sa magulong Pilipinas na ito, ano? So, I mean, to invite the militaries, of course, again, conduct unbecoming of not only a former president but a citizen of the country that should respect the Constitution and the rule of law, no? But we all know that rule of law has always been the challenge, no? with former President Duterte, even when he was president. But let me just say na this invites possibly, no, instability na hindi natin kailangan sa bansa natin sa ngayon, no? At lalong dapat hindi natin naririnig sa isang alyansa na ang tanging kampanya lang nung eleksyon ay unity. Eh yung pa hindi pa makuha, di ba? So I think we must trust, no, that the military itself is professional, and the military should not listen to those that have no sabihin na natin, no legitimate authority to tell them what to do, no? Kasi sa tingin ko, no, the military itself, due to many decades of reform, has been at its most professional level. In fact, ang orientation na nga nila external defense, di ba? So why would you drag them again to the years in which they participate in internal politics? Eh, unang-una, they're not trained to do that. Pangalawa, hindi naman nila trabaho yun. Trabaho yon ng mga politiko, and apparently our political elites are not doing their jobs.
Many analysts, no, would agree with you na the chances of a military coup succeeding are very slim or slim to none, no. However, pwede pa rin may mga elements diyan na manggulo, no, which might be the goal, no, or at least the threat na manggulo. So meron bang elemento sa military na maaring kumampi o to go along with any kind of a plan or even nudge, no, to do something crazy like that?
Ang challenge sa civil-military relations sa Pilipinas is always the the undue influence, particularly of those who are no longer in active service, no, sa military mismo, no? Kaya nakita natin minsan kahit retirado na, malaki pa rin yung sway. And we all know that Duterte has highly favored, no, the military during his term. And 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 we also know that the Marcos Jr. administration is trying to finally reform the military and to make it a professional one, even addressing some of the problems na pinabayaan ng mga previous administrations like the pension system. So sa tingin ko, yet there might be those who could be convinced, but the larger question is, kahit naman magkaroon ng mga military adventures in politics na to, kaya ba yan suportahan ng mga publiko, no? Kaya ba yan suportahan ng mga taong bayan? Because if it will have any chances of success, kailangan may popular support. At hindi lang yon, will they be seen as legitimate? Kasi what basically former President Duterte is asking the military is to grab power. In a country na may consensus tayo that the only legitimate way to transfer power is through elections. At wala namang bahid so far, no, na alam natin that the 2022 elections was an illegitimate exercise of the people's will. No? So sa tingin ko, baka yun nga ang objective para, shake lang the foundations and to throw a monkey wrench to a government that was supposedly elected by a majority of the electorate, no, to cause trouble, to cause paranoia, which I think, no, the question, it begs the question, no, para kaninong interest ba nila ginagawa to? Kasi kung pansarili na lang nila, then they cannot be called political leaders nor representatives nor servants of the people.
Okay, well, yun na nga, no? Mukhang hindi masyado nag-resonate sa publiko yung calls for President Marcos to resign. Mukhang wala naman din tayong naramdaman na enthusiasm for a military coup to end this particular administration. Meron pang calls for Mindanao to secede. May mga political leaders sa Mindanao na nagsasabing, no, that's not a good idea either. Kumbaga, all of these calls, no, by the Dutertes, at least the Dutertes in Davao, si former President Duterte and his son si Baste, are falling flat, no? So do you think there's also a risk that they could actually be wasting whatever political capital they have, no? By making calls, by trying to do things na hindi naman mag-a-appeal sa publiko except for, I guess, the crowds that show up at their rallies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a gamble, but I also don't want to totally leave out the idea that the Dutertes really think that, they have so much political capital that they are engaging in risky behavior by throwing it away. We all know that President Duterte had higher approval ratings by the time he left office than during the time that he assumed office, which has never happened in any Philippine president since public opinion polling began in the country. But at the same time, kung ikaw dating presidente, paano mo ba gustong matandaan ka ng taong bayan, no? By doing such, no, insinuating these things na so far wala namang buy-in, you're actually casting yourself to further irrelevance, no? Baka mangyari na lang yan, you just continue megaphoning all of these things and no one listens anymore. Kasi sa totoo lang, ang gusto ko rin tanungin, no, dun sa mga naghahangad nito, hindi pa ba tayo napapagod? Kasi ang lahat ng kapitbahay natin sa ASEAN, lalagpasan na tayo. Economically, supposedly, no, maganda yung ating conditions with the exception, of course, of inflation and unemployment and inequality. Pero yung parating sinasabi sa akin, no, ng mga tagalabas ng bansa, those who are observing us, is that it's the politics, it's the quality of your political elite, no? And thus the question, no, if you're any Filipino citizen, ito pa ba, do these people still speak for you on your behalf? Kasi kung hindi na, then we must let them know what else is new. We've heard all of these things before. What else can they offer more unless, yun na nga, they're only preaching to the choir and they're only mobilizing the same true believers and not really the silent majority supposedly.
Well, yun nga ang posibleng mangyari dito, no? Na mag-ingay sila ng mag-ingay, wala na, hindi naman nagre-resonate sa buong bansa, no? Itong mga calls nila for this kind of change, no? Si dating Pangulong Duterte, despite sabi mo nga record high approval rates when he exited his office, no? Parang looking back, there just seems to have been a series of strategic errors, no? If you just kind of try to analyze his rhetoric and actions, if he didn't want BBM to succeed him or have any chance of succeeding him, then why take the trouble of kind of helping rehabilitate the Marcos image, you know, with the hero's burial and speaking so highly of the father, and then on the part of Sara naman, despite her high approval ratings then before the election and before they decided to join forces, slid down, no? Slid down to VP, no? And as a result, you know, yung nanalo, yung ayaw ng tatay niya, no? So they kind of planted the seeds of this kind of conflict during the campaign itself, no? So parang there just seems to be so much dissonance, no, on the part of the Dutertes when it comes to how they are going to relate to the Marcoses, no? Kasi kung ayaw talaga ni dating Pangulong Duterte, why join forces at all? Kung may malaking chance naman na mananalo si Sara without teaming up.
Right. Definitely, I can distinctly remember when Duterte started his presidency. A lot of, you know, my colleagues in academe were saying na, oh, Duterte is the most brutal, fiercest strongman the country has ever seen, no? Kaya lang over time, no, nakikita natin that this is a strongman who doesn't seem to have a long-term plan, kasi yung mga counterparts niya sa ibang bansa, no, yung Hugo Chavez, Evo Morales, or the one from Turkey, they really made sure that they prolonged themselves in power, no? They changed the constitution that allowed them to go beyond their terms of office. They make sure the institutions will be on their side. And for a moment, Duterte, if you look at the Supreme Court right now, a majority are Duterte appointees. If you look at the constitutional commissions right now, independent ones, they're all appointed by Duterte. No? So unfinished at hindi mukhang hindi naayos yun. So therefore, it seems like Duterte himself, President Rodrigo Duterte, did not really strategically plan, no? And I think at the end, the Dutertes are realizing that in Philippine politics, it is such a winner-take-all scheme that it doesn't matter na ikaw yung nagpanalo nung presidente nung nakaraang eleksyon. What matters is sino yung presidente. Kasi kung sino yung presidente, sa kanya umiikot yung kapangyarihan. And I think the most strategic blunder was to really allow another dynasty to take power when you were supposed to be at the peak of it, no? Kumbaga, if that is the case, really, what could have happened is that Sara Duterte should not have accepted the vice presidency and should just have run as president. But of course, these are all hypotheticals. What I'm saying is, at the end, no, you might be a very powerful political personality, but if you are not president, then you don't have really real power at all, and your political power will always be precarious kasi hindi ikaw yung nakaupo sa Malacanang.
Well, so I guess in a way you're saying parang naisahan ng mga Marcos ang mga Duterte, no? Kasi I guess because one of the only reasons, or perhaps the major reason, that Sarah slid down to VP is she was expecting that she would get the Marcoses' support when it was her turn to run for president, no? So in a way, the Dutertes had to trust the Marcoses. So like that could have been another strategic mistake, no? By trusting another dynasty to share power with you, because there are other Marcoses now and Romualdeses that are in line, that think that they're in line, and now have a strategic advantage, no? So in a way, parang despite all the advantages that the Dutertes have or have had, including yung high approval ratings at the end of the Duterte administration, in a way, naisahan sila ng mga Marcos.
Well, the Marcos dynasty has been existing and has been in the national political arena for a much longer time than the Dutertes. But let us remember, the Duterte dynasty was mainly a locally based one, and its first foray into national politics was only in 2016. On the other hand, the Marcoses are ilang henerasyon yan di ba? And throughout a period of time, and not all dynasties are equal, but in terms of sa tingin natin political acumen and political skill, if I were to assess the different dynasties, the Marcoses really are way more advanced in terms of experience, in terms of the many political battles that they have to fight. And on the other hand, it seems like the Dutertes, and even when President Duterte was president, still seems to not totally understand how national level politics work. And how the constellation of different political forces, of different political elites, it defines Philippine politics, no? Hindi naman yan yung parang presidente ako, ang lahat ng sasabihin ko mangyayari. That's the problem. We did not really see that. So even if President Duterte said something, most of the other allies when he was president, and even like let's say yung military, he wanted a pivot to China, but some in the military would say na we don't think so. So therefore, the Balikatan exercises continued, relations with the US and Western allies continued, despite the hard sell of Duterte to shift to China and Russia. The military didn't pay him any attention, and he's commander-in-chief supposedly.
More than 2 years ago, you wrote about a so-called emerging dynasty cartel, no? Between the Marcoses and the Dutertes, no? Sabi mo nga, it's another level of Philippine dynastic politics, no? And sabi mo, this alliance between the families, if it becomes ironclad, an extension of power is possible even beyond 2034, because that's how cartels work, no? So itong dynasty cartel na sinasabi mo, no? And you're the first analyst or writer I've seen use this term, no? Medyo short-lived, no? If you're to judge by recent events, no? Mukhang bridges have been burned. Wala nang balikan ito after Digong and Bongbong accuse each other of being addicts, no? Although BBM seems to have forgiven former President Duterte for drug references or accusations in the past, no? Pero was this did you actually foresee this scenario where this dynasty cartel would actually end long before the next election?
When I tried to somehow give an idea of that this alliance, which sabi ko nga, no, the two biggest and most powerful political dynasties, if they ever are able to keep it, no, together, it's such a formidable political force, no, in the country, and with enough descendants, no, yun yung ano dun eh, kumbaga may pila eh, no, so pwedeng mag give and take, but the entire cartel idea rests upon an equal partnership, and a partnership that is in which power will be shared, no, even promiscuously. The thing is, mukhang walang, kahit nagkaroon man ng alyansa, the problem is what solidifies the commitment to stay in the alliance. And if there are perceptions na na mukhang hindi ako napagbibigyan, hindi ako na-accommodate, then the alliance falls apart. So I think itong hindi na natin nakikita masyado, at yung prospects of this dynasty cartel are very low. I'm not totally counting it out kasi Howie, minsan baka pag eleksyon dun sila nag-unity team eh. 'Di ba? Ngayon, away, pero pagdating na ng botohan, lalo na kung merong credible threat from other political forces, then pragmatism will rule, no? Words have been said to one another, but the bigger picture, the larger goal is to ensure that power stays, no, within them, no? Kaya lang, the cartel idea will really no longer be relevant if one believes that one does not need the other in order to perpetuate themselves in power, no, or to regain power that they have lost, no. So kung ang tingin nung Marcos dynasty at ng Duterte dynasty is that hindi na nila kailangan ng isa't isa, no, then we will see really the end of this alliance. At medyo nakikita natin ngayon kasi sa totoo lang, kung magkakaroon man ng polarization ngayon, it seems like it's between the two. At ni walang third force. I'm not saying the opposition doesn't exist, but we're not feeling them. We're not really seeing the umbrella, the tent that is supposed, that in which there is a lot of space for. Because if you ask Filipinos now, o kaninong koponan ka ba, some of them might even say neither, no? And I'm hoping na may ibang alternatives, but unfortunately we're not seeing it right now.
Okay, well, you referred to the Marcoses and the Dutertes as an alliance, no? But obviously you see them as more than just an alliance. You call them a dynasty cartel, no? And usually yung salitang cartel ginagamit sa konteksto ng drug cartel or oil cartel, where other players are excluded, no? Sometimes violently, no? So sa view mo, this alliance, this unit team, this tandem na pinorm between the Marcoses and the Dutertes was a cartel that's meant to exclude other players, no? But itong crack, no, itong dito sa cartel na to is being viewed by others as an opportunity, no, for yung nga sinasabi mo ang third force, no? What is the status of the opposition? Itong marami rin na kumampanya para kay Leni Robredo, yung sumanib after the election dito sa Angat Buhay, no? Yung mga na-mobilize na kabataan nung 2021, 2022, no, na substantial din. Ano bang kalagayan ngayon nitong sinasabi mong third force o opposition? Kasi ngayon lumalabas ang opposition lang ay mga Duterte mismo.
Let us remember, 15 million voters, no, casted their vote possibly against this alliance, no, when they casted their vote to the main opposition candidate, Leni Robredo. So this is no small number, no? Marami to. So ibig sabihin, somewhere out there in this bangayan ng mga Marcos at Dutertes, there are people who can never see themselves siding one or the other, no? At the moment, unfortunately, untapped no? Kasi unang-una, for example, we're not seeing the usual I would say, no, intense and massive opposition, for example, to charter change. Ang nangunguna nga against charter change are the Dutertes, who campaigned for charter change when they were in power, ironically. So, I mean, kasi dahil hindi na sila yung driver ng charter change, kaya siguro sila against, no? And of course, as we all know in Philippine political history, the one who is next in line or at least gunning for the presidency will always be the one against charter change. No? Yan naman ang history ng chat sa Pilipinas, no? Pag ikaw na yung presidente na, of course you will not agree to changing the rules all of a sudden. So nandun yung opportunity, but we must also understand how the opposition has failed to capture, no? A lot of the hearts and minds of Filipinos. We also know that how they were, of course, deliberately attacked and threatened and victimized by disinformation and fake news. Kaya lang, if in social media, for example, they are being disempowered, that should not affect how they feel about their ability to offer themselves as alternatives to the public. So, okay, gets ko yun, no? Natalo, gets ko yung licking one's wounds, but there must be a time wherein you will just have to stand your ground despite whatever online hate or fake news being said to you. Lahat naman tayo na biktima na ng fake news dito. So no one is really that special, and I think the key here is really to tap into that and create that big tent. Unfortunately, minsan yung mga bagahe, mga negative issues, ideological differences, sometimes yun yung mga nagiging spoilers. But sana itong mga opposition sources of possibly the opposition can rise, can think beyond themselves and think of the bigger picture and to offer alternative leadership. Hindi naman kailangan sa election lang eh. I mean, the election should not be seen as the only arena of contestation, but it should lead to that. It's important, no, that they win. But our democratic constitution at the moment, kasi hindi pa naman nababago, and our framework, may civil liberties naman tayo that allows freedom of expression and freedom of assembly at the moment. Then ito yung hindi natin nakikita for now, no? It's sad to see it this way, but hopefully, no, may makita tayo kasi in a democracy, ang hirap naman na ang choices mo between lesser evils, or sabi nga nung kanta, Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. That's not a democracy.
Well, yun nga ang nakapagtataka para sa mga observers, no, ng politika sa atin nung kampanya and bago mag-election ng 2022. We did see so much energy, and wala naman natakot doon sa trolling sa social media noon, no? I mean, people were really coming out, speaking out, getting involved for the first time, house to house, kinakausap kahit yung mga kalaban nila o kalaban doon sa mga neighborhoods nila, no? And then bigla na lang parang nag-uwian, no? And now parang nagkaroon nga ng opportunity dahil nga the Marcoses and the Dutertes basically are tearing each other down, and it's kind of a surprising early opportunity in this administration for this third force, no? So at this point, you still don't see that emerging. You still don't see any new activity on that front.
Kasi Howie, at present, there is an existential threat to our present constitutional order. No, kahit sabihin na nilang, economic provisions lang naman yung gagalawin namin dyan. The entire history of constitutional attempts to change the constitution of this country, no, tells us otherwise. No? Kasi kaya nga hindi siya nag-succeed ever since Pero ngayon yung pinakaseryoso kasi mukhang natutunan na ng mga political elites how to go around the legal and institutional obstacles that were faced by previous attempts. May existential threat yung constitution natin ngayon, and we don't hear, we don't see, we don't feel the contempt regarding this. Yung mga balita ninyo sa GMA na nagkakabayaran sa signatures, and it's such a ludicrous idea to think that people know the intricacies of procedure, voting separately, voting jointly, to the point that it becomes the stuff of a people's initiative. Wag naman natin insultuhin yung intelligence ng mga tao, no? So, at wag din naman natin silang i-patronize. At the same time, so I think ito sana yung opportunity kasi it's less about personality. You have a threat. The Constitution is about to be tinkered. At kahit sabihin na nilang economic provisions lang to, alam naman ng lahat na pag binuksan mo na yan, everything is fair game. So, ano ba yung and if you will look at those who are spearheading this, ang question ko is there public trust, no? And why now? And every economist na credible sinabi na you don't need to change the constitution if the objective is to improve the economy. So you are barking at the wrong tree. Iba yung dapat mong baguhin. Ang key sa attracting foreign direct investment is governance. It's the rule of law. It's eliminating bureaucratic red tape. Kasi kahit magbago tayo ng constitution, foreign investors will at the moment will choose Vietnam over the Philippines, will choose other ASEAN countries. A better looking constitution will not solve that problem.
But balikan ko lang tong sinasabi mong the existential threat of charter change, no? Kasi may mga ironies diyan, no? Kasi right now, former President Duterte is leading the resistance to charter change, where when that was one of his signature promises, no? Nung nangampaan niya siya for the presidency, he on his platform was charter change, in particular yung federalism nga na ina-advocate ng niya at saka ng marami din na sa literato, lalo na sa Mindanao, no? Pero ngayon na mukhang nasa labas na siya ng Colombo, he's leading the resistance to this. So it seems like, it just seems like a personal motive here, no? And then yung isa pang irony dito is similarly si Pangulong Marcos had not campaigned on any kind of charter change promise, no? Hindi yan nabanggit doon sa platform. So it seems like there was some kind of Trojan horse here na hindi pinangako, and then ngayon nandiyan na, and it has an even greater chance. Or do you think it has a greater chance of succeeding now? So, ang lumalabas dito, the walang prinsipyo involved, no? Dito sa charter change. It's all about how to extend politicians' terms and stay in power, no? Or under Duterte, was there a sincere goal of making us a better functioning democracy under a federal system?
Right. Balikan ko yung sinabi mo na Marcos didn't really campaign for it. In fact, when I presented the position paper of the UP Department of Political Science in a House hearing of the Committee on Constitutional Amendments, I even mentioned that back then, BBM was even quoted in saying that I don't think charter change is in the minds of the Filipino people right now, and I don't think it will succeed anytime soon. And this is why it is never part of my campaign. No? Na-quote siya doon, and I even read that quote to the dismay of the members of the committee of the House during that time. Part to nung pagiging accountable ng ating mga politiko. We must always demand them to stay true to their word. And for a constitution that is not that maraming Pilipino hindi naiintindihan, hindi nabasa, there are surveys wherein constitutional change is nowhere near the people's consciousness. Ano yung basehan? Kaya nga sa tingin ko seryoso siya kasi nagagamit yung taong bayan through people's initiative in saying that this is as if it's a bottom-up process na ang clamor nanggagaling sa taong bayan. Magandang tanungin yan eh. I mean, kung ako lang may survey firm, tatanong ko yan eh. Totoo ba to? Kasi if this is really what the members of the House are saying at hindi naman talaga to yung nararamdaman ng tao, then seems like members of the House of Representatives are representatives of someone else and not the people who voted for them, who may not even know the issues involved, and yet it is being presented as if through people's initiative na gusto talaga nilang baguhin yung Constitution. In fact, ang gusto nilang gawin baguhin lang the way the House and the Senate will vote from separately to jointly. Bilib na bilib naman ako sa mga taong bayan natin to be able to understand this. No, I'm not demeaning, but all I'm saying is, can we be realistic? No? Talaga bang merong nanggagaling sa grassroots na demand na ang pagbabago sa konstitusyon dapat parehong bumuboto ang Senado at ang Kamara at hindi magkahiwalay? I think that's the tough question eh. That's the hard question that we need to ask. And hopefully, our political leaders who think that they have the best interest of the people are willing to listen to the reality. Kasi kung hindi, then they are selling a different reality. Kaya siya naging seryoso, Howie, kasi nagkaroon ng budgetary allocation na hindi natin alam, 'di ba? Part to ng magic ng budgetary process natin, no? Hindi to na-cover ng media. And rather than kasi before yung mga
For context lang, yung budgetary allocation for COMELEC for plebiscites, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oo. Para malinaw lang, yung para saan yung budget na yan. Kasi plebiscites can be for a lot of things, di ba? Pero you're saying, siningit yon dahil nga may nagpaplano na magpa-plebiscito para sa People's Initiative.
I mean, kung talagang seryoso itong I mean, if really the intentions are really good and they really want to go with what the people feel and what the people think, perhaps kung magkakaroon man ng plebisito, the plebiscite should be to ask people whether they are in favor of changing the Constitution or not. Hindi dapat yun assumed. Kung sakaling magkakaroon ng pagtatanong, kasi yung mga ibang bansa that change their Constitution, nagsimula sa ganun eh. They ask the people, do you want to change the Constitution? At pag sinabing hindi, then it should be respected. Pag sinabing oo, then we proceed so that it will truly be a democratic and people-oriented process. Kasi sa lumalabas ngayon, mukhang dictated pa ng vested interest kasi opening the country to foreign capital, opening all these sectors. Sino ba talaga ang makikinabang dito? At mukhang napakalakas nung lobby kasi from the ads, yung EDSA Puera, from there seems to be really, no? Kaya a grand scheme. And this is why for me ito yung pinakaseryoso kasi they seem to have figured out and learned from previous attempts on how to do about this. And it will really be unfortunate na parang papanoorin na lang natin to as it goes along. We won't express our own fears and our own doubts on this process. Parang nanonood tayo ng car crash in slow motion tapos we can't do anything about it.
But I also want to point out that itong mga dynasties, no, are not monolithic, no, when it comes to charter change. As you know, no, si Senator Amy Marcos has been quite vocal against it. And in fact, nagbabangayan sila ng first cousin niya, si Speaker Martin Romualdez, who is in favor. The Dutertes down in Davao, si Digong and Baste are against. Si Sara has been, kind of been saying she's still with the administration on everything, no? So she's been careful not to rock the boat. and si President Marcos has given her his continuing support, no? So even within the dynasties, no, hindi nagkakaisa on their respective position, no? So may nagsasabi na ano lang to, moro-moro lang to, no? Parang it's all a part of a spectacle leading to the same thing. Ano tingin mo dito? Hindi talaga nagkakaisa. Halimbawa, itong mga Marcos, no? Amy versus Martin, and then where does President Marcos, Bongbong Marcos, really stand on all of this?
Right. I think at the end, no, if you're President Marcos, no, you don't want to be seen as very intrusive into these games that politicians play. Kasi presidente ka, head of state ka, you should be above, no? Politics, that's one. You must understand their position often comes from where they sit, no, anong posisyon, no? So for example, Amy Marcos's opposition is quite consistent with the opposition of the Senate as an institution and senators individually in every chacha attempt in Philippine political history. Kaya nga naka-devise ng way para ikutan na lang yung Senado through people's initiative, 'di ba? By letting them be overwhelmed by the sheer number of the House of Representatives in voting. But let us also remember na yung CONCOM na inappoint, no, na ni President Duterte before, na one possible amendment is we might have a bicameral system but there no longer be co-equal, meaning the fear is that the Senate will be disempowered as an institution, no? Kasi hindi naman sa lahat ng bicameral legislature sa buong mundo, hindi naman kailangan silang co-equal, no? US presidential system lang yon. But if you look at other systems, normally the more numerous house is the more powerful one, no? At kung ikaw senador, nationally elected ka, and we all know this is the recruitment pool of most of our Philippine presidents, hindi ka papayag in such a change, no, in the way the rules are being put up. Doon naman sa iba, yung kay Vice President Sara Duterte, of course she is hedging at the moment because she doesn't really want to be put in one box because that will attract antagonism. So at the end, I think hindi nakakagulat itong mga variation na to. Ang immediate result niyan is more confusion for us, for the public, unnecessary confusion, and sa tingin ko it distracts us from more important things that the country should be more focused on.
Okay, speaking of which, no, balikan lang natin tong bangayan, and maybe this is where we can also end, no, itong bangayan sa pagitan ng dating pangulo at yung kasalukuyang pangulo, no, kasi si dating Pangulong Duterte mukhang hindi siya tatahimik, no, anytime soon. Recently he challenged President Marcos to take a drug test, and to ask whether his cocaine habit had a prescription, etc. I mean, parang nagiging playground taunts na, no? Sabi mo nga, it's unstatesmanlike, unseemly, but I mean, si dating President Duterte is playing to his own base, which seems to be, amused at least, no, by these things, no. But ano yung pwedeng mangyari rito, no? I mean, will any president tolerate this kind of accusation, this kind of attack, for indefinitely, even if it's from a former president who was popular, no, like President Duterte? It's not just about drugs, no. I mean, dating President Duterte, called on the military to take action, and then even said that nung panahon niya, I mean, swerte si Pangulong Marcos na dahil nasa drug list siya, and he was not, and he's still alive, and he was not victimized, no. And even said he might end up like his father, Ferdinand Marcos Sr., who was overthrown, no, by people power. This is kind of unprecedented, no. I don't recall this this kind of this kind of verbal assault against a current president from a former president ever.
Sa tingin ko at the end, the president of the country, no, ang nature ng presidency, it always has all the political tools, no, in order to defend itself and promote its interests. Kaya nga sinabi ko kanina, at the end, ang importante, nakaupo ka ba sa Malacanang o hindi. So, former President Duterte might create a lot of, noise, might create a lot of distractions, but at the end, no, he is risking irrelevance, no? For now parang nakakaaliw, no? Kasi of course yung itong awayan ng mga political elites para sa ating Pilipino, parang spectator sport yan no, na parang gusto natin minsan nakikitang nagbabangayan sila, no? But ang tingin ko is it will get lame, to use the term. Darating din sa point na mauumay din tayo, no? And pag hindi na siya entertaining, what else can former President Duterte do? In the meantime, there are critical policy legacies that it truly believe in, na para sa kanya legacy niya yon, at yun yung narrative na inaando ng Marcos administration. And let's admit it, the way that Duterte and his allies have responded to the threat of ICC prosecution, no? And that for them is the existential threat. And we all know that the prospects of that process making progress rests upon in the government of the day, which is occupied by Marcos Jr. and not the Dutertes.
Okay, so you think the only risk to former President Duterte when he keeps attacking President Marcos is the risk of irrelevance, no? Because some might think that what he's saying is already a form of sedition. So there's also a risk to President Marcos, di ba? If he just allows if he allows himself to be abused in this way. So you're saying President Marcos will just wait this out until interest wanes, and because for 6 years we heard this kind of we heard this kind of language, no, and then mukhang hindi naman nawalan ng interest yung ibang tao sa ganyang klaseng salita.
I think in the end, no, and this is why it's good that you have institutions making statements, speaking up. PIDEA launched something. The military, through the chief of staff, also issued a statement. Institutional yung response. Kasi style naman to ni former President Duterte. Let's remember, he was a fiscal before, and fiscals usually accuse and allege. Kaya lang sa tingin ko, for sa atin bilang citizens, media, as well as kami sa academia, and every sector in Philippine society, to accuse is something, but it's more important to provide evidence. So evidence-based, facts-based, and kung if former President Duterte will keep on doing this without providing evidence, then sino maniniwala? But on the other hand, for President Marcos, I think there must be a calibrated response, na a combination na pagpatulan, kasi isa pa ba yan sa aatupagin niya sa dami ng supposedly trabaho ng isang pangulo. But at the same time, his advisors must also ensure that he does not appear weak. And that the perception is that he is not governing the country from a position of weakness. So I am sure the president has all the advice that the best advisors around, no, that could tell him to address this through the formal tools of the presidency, but at the same time do this politically. Ang key naman dito is yung sino pa ba yung mga political allies from the political elites, from the politicians, that are behind, for example, the former President Duterte and the Dutertes. For example, Mindanao political elites are already negating a lot of what he is saying. Kung magkakaroon man ng loyalty check among the political elites, kanino sila, no? Alam naman natin that the Philippine president has all the tools to convince political elites to be on his side and not the side of the one accusing him of these allegations.
Okay, that's a good note to end on. So, maraming salamat, Aries. No, thank you for shedding light rather than spreading more heat. Mabuhay ka, Dr. Aries Arugay, Chair of the Political Science Department at UP Diliman. Maraming salamat.
Salamat, Howie.
Hi, I'm Howie Severino. Check out the Howie Severino Podcast. New episodes will stream every Thursday. Listen for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other platforms.